Meanwhile in Rukia's cell, the small Shinigami was still in the tower that served as a prison. This tower also blocked the detection of her powers. That was a huge mistake made by the captains. Now the little girl could be seen reading a book, while lying on a red velvet armchair. Beside her stood a bookshelf full of books. On the other side sat a miniature refrigerator, stocked with her favorite foods meant to last a month, and in front of her stood a television. Well, prison is not so bad with things like this around. I give thanks to the genius who invented prison smuggling, thought Rukia as she set down her book and turned on her television. She found a very funny show while flipping through all the channels. I congratulate you. Now, because of you we will have to switch realities. And all because you made the squirrels angry. I already told you I cannot keep doing this, said the cartoon character with white hair and a scientist's coat to a traumatized teenager. Ha ha ha. Where do they even come up with such ideas? Said the black-haired girl as she remembered how she had ended up in this prison. Flashback of Rukia. While waiting to be taken to the confinement area, the little girl became friends with a boy from the 4th Division named Hanataro. She told him about all the good things that existed in the world of the living. The unfortunate part was that she was not able to say goodbye to him when she was taken to the tower. There they placed a special collar on her that blocked the flow of her reiatsu so she could not escape. Despite this, she realized that hidden in the change of clothes she had been given, her teacher, Matsumoto, had smuggled in one of the capsules from Goku's world, so she would not get bored being locked away for so many days. Once the guards left her alone inside the tower where not a single sound could be heard, she brought her hands to her neck and removed the uncomfortable collar. That object kept anyone with spiritual energy from breaking it, but if that person had a second kind of energy such as ki, they could break it without any trouble. I will need all my power to escape, and maybe confront my brother when they come for me, thought Rukia. She activated the capsule. Out came the furnishings of a typical recreation room, where a television was already on playing a cartoon. I wonder what this thing is like, she thought as she settled in to watch the cartoon. She could not stop laughing, especially at a line delivered by a man in an elegant suit and an 18th century hat. I might be the devil, but your grandfather is the devil, said that man to a teenage girl with orange hair tied back in a ponytail. Author's note: if you know which cartoon this is, comment below. And if you know it, you probably laughed just as hard as I did at those episodes. End of flashback. I feel it will not be long now before I see my boyfriend again. But I cannot shake this feeling that something horrible is coming, thought Rukia, pressing her hand to her chest. With Gohan, the Saiyans group did not take long to reach the prison, and were soon only a couple of meters away from it. Along the way the group got to know each other better, especially an interested Momo who kept learning more about her best friend's boyfriend. She could not help feeling jealous of her, because she wanted someone just like Gohan, or Gohan himself, as her own partner. Once the 4 of them reached the entrance, they wasted no time running into the other rescue groups, where the rest of the Saiyan's friends waited along with his girlfriends, Taki and Orihime. The moment they saw little Sun, they threw themselves at him, hugging and kissing him. Urayu, Chad, and Hanataro broke into sweat drops at the girl's behavior. Ganayu cursed under his breath at Sun's luck, and Momo wore a pout with a face full of jealousy. Hello dear, I missed you, said a happy Taki. I missed you too, said Orihime, finishing up kissing her boyfriend. Oh girls, I missed you too, said Gohan with a smile. Once this affectionate moment ended, Chad asked about Gohan's 2 new companions and Gohan introduced them, but the girls eyed Momo with suspicion, sensing that someone else had taken an interest in their man. The moment was interrupted when a large number of Shinigami surrounded them, closing them into a circle ready to fight. Come on guys, Rukia is waiting for us, let us take these guys down, said Taki, activating her powers and cracking her knuckles, while Chad mimicked the gesture. Yes, let us go, said Gohan, ready to give those guys a beating. The 4th Division is going to have so much work after today, said Hanataro, knowing that if these guys kept hospitalizing Shinigami there would not be one left without something broken. Ganayu, Urayu, Orihime, and Momo readied themselves, and within a minute they all charged into the attack, cutting a path through their enemies. Returning to Harabel, Unohana simply watched the blonde with a wicked look while Harabel studied her enemy, searching for any weakness in her powers. Answers she found the moment they clashed weapons. With just one touch of the captain's sword upon impact, Harabel's weapon began to melt. After several strikes it broke in 2, leaving retreat as the only option. Unohana would not allow that. Using her flash step she tried to strike the blonde's back with her acid, but Harabel quickly fired a Sero, and used her Sunito to dodge, and put distance between them. The Vosto Lord quickly had to tear off her boots since the acid had touched them. She was not willing to find out if her feet would be next. She did not want to take any chances since her regeneration was nowhere near as strong as Anohana's. With one motion the blonde rebuilt her sword and set out to find anything useful against this woman, who held the title of the first Kenpachi, a title given only to the strongest Shinigami who have killed the most. The first thing the Vosto Lord noticed was that Anohana had accidentally stepped in her own acid, injuring herself. She used her Kido to keep her own technique from killing her. So you are not immune to your own technique? That could work in my favor, and being this excited has cost you the sharp mind you once had, thought Harem just before dodging another slash from the mad woman. Changing her strategy, Goku's fiancée set out to test her techniques. She began by applying her trident power to her weapon, so that when it clashed against Minazuki it could resist the corrosive acid longer. Before her sword could break again, she fired off a pair of water projectiles which Anohana cut through with ease. Growing more confident, the blonde used her Sonido to try landing a hit while regenerating her weapon, but the captain was no fool. Using her own speed she avoided the blow. Had it not been for the Vosto Lord's quick reflexes she would not have dodged those lethal counters. Even so, a few drops of acid reached her, forcing her to shed her shoulder guards and pieces of her skirt, tossing them into the water left behind by her attack. Wanting to confirm something, Harem threw another scrap of skirt into the acid-laced water, and saw the corrosion had slowed. What she did not expect was that while making this discovery she was being encircled by a ring of acid closing in around her, while Anohana laughed from above. You fought well, Hollow, but now you die. If you try to escape upward I will catch you, and if you go below you will end up standing in acid. It is over. Say your final words, said the captain like a madwoman. I think I have a plan. But first I need to clear this stuff off the ground, thought the blonde as she recreated her enormous sword. To Anohana's surprise it had a hilt and was not fused to her arm as everyone had assumed. Take a deep breath. It may be your last. Maiden of the sea, shouted the blonde, driving her sword into the ground. Suddenly her power surged upward again as a tornado of water wrapped completely around her and lifted her into the sky. With Gohan, the Saiyan's friends were still fighting the Shinigami when in the distance they felt the immense power Harem was unleashing along with the towering column of water impossible to miss. Momo and the rest of the Shinigami nearly dropped to their knees under the crushing spiritual pressure of a hollow. With Goku's fiancés, so you are using your second release. You must be in a rough fight if you need that, thought Rangaku and Yuruchi as they made their way toward Goku's position, before going to collect their harem companion. In the distance, Kenpachi kept running with Yachiru toward the prison until the tremendous power he sensed caught his attention. Nearby he also felt Anohana's presence, so the sadistic captain changed course to see what was happening, leaving Yachiru confused. Kenny, are you chasing the fight or chasing Anohana? Thought the pink-haired little girl with a smile. With Nanao, Goku was still blocking the attacks of the black-haired woman in glasses, trying to clear up the misunderstanding when the lieutenant suddenly froze. In the distance she felt the very same hollow presence that had knocked her down growing even stronger. What kind of hollow has power like this? No registered Vosto Lord has ever shown such strength, said a rattled Nanao, but Goku calmed her down. Do not worry. Harem may not get along with Shinigami who treat hollows like monsters, but she promised me she would not kill anyone, said Sun with a smile. And how exactly do you know that? Do not tell me, said Nanao, pointing a finger at Sun as her glasses slid down her nose. She is also my future wife, and I trained her too, said Goku, smiling as always, leaving the woman frozen stiff for the second time that day. Let me get this straight. He is going to marry a former lieutenant, a former captain, and a hollow. When did the world go insane? Thought Nanao, who had already had far too many overwhelming emotions for one day. Listen, I have had enough of this. I demand you tell me exactly what kind of relationship you have with 3 women, and it had better be good, because if not, began the furious lieutenant as a killing aura rolled off her, frightening the Saiyan. Returning to the fight, Anohana had not expected that surge of power, but rather than fear it had only made her blood boil more with battle excitement as she watched the water tornado climb toward the sky not far from her. I am not merely a Vosto Lord, said Haribel's voice from within the tornado. From inside the swirling water the captain could make out a feminine shape shifting, but she could not see clearly since the water was too dark. I am an Arankar, and also the future wife of Son Goku, shouted the blonde, shattering the water tower with the new weapon of her second form. As she emerged, Haribel's transformation could be seen in its full glory, making her look like a goddess out of Greek mythology. One leg was covered by a short and slightly transparent white skirt, while the other leg was barely covered at all. Her footwear stayed mostly the same aside from her boots, which were now shorter. The rest of her body was adorned with the rib bones of a shark skeleton wrapped around her torso, while her chest was covered by a thin white cloth cinched tight at her back. Her face showed few changes aside from black markings resembling eyeshadow, and a bone plate covering her neck. Her hair had grown down to the middle of her back, and her massive sword had been replaced by a white trident topped with a skull. Author's note: elegant, beautiful, and revealing without going overboard. No image available. Unohana was struck by the tremendous power radiating from that transformation, but refusing to fall behind, she swung her sword, firing her lethal acid. It was stopped by a shield of water, leaving the black-haired woman baffled as to where it had come from. In this form, I have complete control over any water I produce, so I can shape it however I please, said Harem as the acid-laced water shield turned with a wave of her hand into 3 daggers hurled at the captain. Using her flash step, the captain dodged them, but the blonde kept pace, using her now enhanced Sonido until they stood face to face. You raised your power, but I will still finish you off, said the sadistic black-haired woman, striking with Minazuki. Harem blocked the blow, using the trident's power woven into her new weapon, so it could hold against the acid a while longer. As Unohana kept swinging until she shattered the trident and prepared to land a blow to Harem's chest, a dragon made of water slammed into her, instead searing her skin since the water carried the acid within it. In truth, Harem had summoned that creature to push her opponent back, while confirming something she had noticed several times already. She was preparing to use another technique enhanced by her second resurrection. You are vulnerable to your own Benkei. This will hurt me, but in the end it will hurt you far more, thought the blonde, readying a master plan that was about to be delayed. As if the captain had read her enemy's mind, she healed her wounds with Kido and charged again, this time with everything she had. Using her flash step, she struck from every direction, forcing the Vosto Lord onto the defensive. Harem eventually took cuts to her leg and arms, which she had to regenerate before the acid could kill her, but relying on the same tactic, she used her Sonido, and at one point charged a Risero that drove her rival back before trapping her in water creatures while finishing her master plan. Take your last breath, Dark Waterfall, said Goku's fiancée, summoning a larger version of her original technique. This time the water was not clear at all. When she released the attack, the last of her creations, a shark working alongside the others, forced Unohana to drop Minazuki. Before she could attempt a flash step, she was already swallowed by the torrent of water, making her feel as if she were many meters beneath the ocean under crushing pressure. Let us begin, thought Harem as underwater the bone plate at her neck rose to cover her mouth. The eyeshadow spread across both of her eyes, turning into a kind of black glass, like lenses, giving her the gaze of a shark. She repaired her trident, and finally her boots stretched and fused together, forming a great fin like a mermaid's tail. I must get Minazuki back before I drown, thought the captain, who was struggling immensely just to move. Trapped underwater, she could not use her flash step since Harem had conjured water leeches that drained not only her blood, but her spiritual power too, so she could no longer regenerate. While she searched for her Zanpakuto, she was struck again and again by the creatures Harem had summoned, sharks and dragons among them, and was run through by the blonde's trident, whose mermaid tail made her far more agile in this element. When Unohana spotted her sword, she saw the surrounding water had already mixed with acid, meaning recovering it would be agonizing. Worse, the blonde's relentless assault gave her no room to advance, so she resorted to what Kenpachi liked to call a cheap trick to force her enemy back. From her robe she pulled a handful of daggers, gathering them in the water and hurling them with all her strength. The projectiles tore through the creatures, and one struck Harem in the shoulder, buying the captain enough time to reclaim her sword. Bit by bit she felt her body weakening. She had almost no breath left, and her power kept fading with every passing minute from the acid, so if she was going to die, she intended to take her enemy down with her. Unleashing the full power of Minazuki, she began poisoning the entire body of water to trap the blonde. Even as her own attack tore into her, she knew she still carried enough Ryatsu to heal herself. I have got you now. I just need to hold on, thought Harem as she swam, with her fin as far from the acid as she could. It still reached her, damaging part of her tail and arm, but she pushed through until she broke the surface, where by spending even more power she regenerated the wounds that would have killed her. With her gone, the sphere of water began collapsing. Little strength remained after healing herself, but her plan for Unohana's downfall was already complete. Unohana pulled herself off the ground, gasping for air. Her captain's uniform lay in ruins along with part of her kimono after taking so much acid, but she froze at the sight of an almost untouched Harem. You fought well, Shinigami, but that last attack was the worst mistake you made, said the blonde. What are you talking about? Asked an irritated Unohana, raising a sword that now held almost no power left. In answer, the Vosto Lord pointed her index finger toward the sky, telling her to look. When the captain did, she was horrified. Hovering above her head were hundreds of small spheres of red water, her own acid. What she had failed to account for was that while she unleashed her power, Harem had been quietly drawing that very acid out of the water, leading her straight into this trap. It is over. And with that said, Harem snapped her fingers, sending the spheres raining down on the captain, who could barely fend them off, dodging and slicing them before they landed. Even so, several splashed against her skin, beginning to corrode it. She poured every ounce of her healing power into regenerating. But if the Vosto Lord did anything more, she would not be able to save herself. As the final spheres were cut away, Sun's fiancé stepped back a good distance before hurling her trident straight at the captain, and immediately clasped her hands together behind her for one last attack. Anohana realized what her opponent intended, but before she could react, her bankai flickered out and Haribel's trident ran through her stomach, leaving her utterly defenseless against what came next. Sero came Haim, began the blonde, fusing her own technique with her fiancé's before closing the distance with her Sonido until she stood face to face with the captain, who could do nothing but take the blast head on. The yellow and blue beams slammed into Anohana with brutal force. She had no way to resist as it drove her clean through wall after wall, nearly all the way to the prison entrance, where hundreds of Shinigami already lay scattered, bearing every sign of having fought. Anohana could no longer stand. She had drained every last drop of spiritual power, healing herself from her Benkai's toll, and Haribel's point-blank attack had left her utterly broken. The Vosto Lord's trident still hung buried in her stomach as Harem approached her fallen foe at an unhurried pace. Defeated. No, this cannot be happening to me. I refuse to die at the hands of a hollow, thought the black-haired woman, struggling to rise, though blood loss and exhaustion held her down while Harem pressed the weapon deeper. You know, Shinigami, if we had fought a year ago, and I already had this power, I would have killed you without a second thought. But, began Harem, before she went on, the blonde pulled her trident free from the captain's stomach, and continued speaking. I am not who I used to be. I no longer carry that hatred toward your kind. If you want to thank someone for still being alive, thank my fiancé. Every breath you take now you owe to how he changed me, finished the blonde with a blush. Fiancé. So what Nanao said was true. This hollow is engaged. But to whom? Wondered the captain as she tried to hold her wound closed. Her answer came a moment later. After stepping back a couple of paces, the blonde felt the exhaustion of using all her power to heal herself and unleash her final attack finally catch up to her. Harem was about to collapse backward onto the ground when a pair of muscular arms caught her. The one responsible was her fiancé's son Goku, who scooped her up bridal style. Behind him came Nanao, with whom he had just had a conversation about the nature of his relationship. Flashback of Goku minutes earlier. Let me see if I understand this. All three of you agreed to share you because you could not choose just one without breaking the other two hearts. Is that right? Asked Nanao, adjusting her glasses. Yes, that is right, Nanao-chan. None of us wanted our relationship destroyed. So after talking it over with a friend, and letting them work it out among themselves, I got engaged to all three, said Goku firmly, which caught the lieutenant off guard. I never imagined I would live long enough to meet a man like him. He has a harem, yet he treats them as people, not objects. He loves them all equally. That truly is having a good heart. But why do I feel so angry? Thought Nanao, who, like a certain Vosto Lord, was feeling an emotion she had never experienced before. Well, Nanao, I should get going. Harem has already finished her fight and we need to reach the prison to help Rukia, said Sun, readying himself to fly off. Are you not worried about what Commander Yamamoto might do? He did not earn that position by being weak, said Nanao, certain that after half his captains had been defeated her commander would step in himself. Honestly, I am looking forward to fighting him. If you want, you could come along. It is clear you are not in favor of this execution either, said Sun. I am not sure. My captain opposed it too, but I do not know if rebelling is the right move for me, said the uncertain lieutenant. Do not worry. I will protect you from anything that tries to hurt you, said Sun, smiling, as always making the serious lieutenant blush. All right then. Let us go, said Nanao, trying to hide her blush as she followed our hero. End of flashback. Hello, dear. Did you see what I did to that Shinigami? Said the blonde, acting playfully affectionate as she clung to her man, which made Nanao frown. Yes. I also saw you manage to combine your Sero with the Kamehameha. I am proud of you, said Goku, smiling just before the Vosto Lord stole a kiss, which he returned, only making the lieutenant more irritated. Before things could go further, a groan from Anohana pulled them out of the moment, since she was losing far too much blood and had started coughing it up. Harem explained to her fiancé how the sadistic captain had tried to dissolve her with acid, though she also admitted she had used more power than necessary in her final attack. Now, can you heal her? Asked Goku, still cradling the blonde in his arms. I can. But I will need help so the healing does not drain all my power, said the black-haired woman. Then let me help with that, said Rangaku, descending from the sky alongside Yuruchi and Soifan. While the former lieutenant helped stabilize the captain with Kido, Soifan began peppering Sun with questions, while Yuruchi kept in touch with her students who reported they were nearly at the gate. To everyone's surprise, Kenpachi and Yachiru showed up as well. What happened here? Asked the sadistic captain, surveying the destruction around him along with Captain Unohana lying defeated on the ground. Hi Goku-chan, did you beat up Kenny's friend? Asked the little girl, walking over to Sun. No, little one. Harem handled that, but it still cost her a great deal to bring her down, said Goku, who was still carrying the Vosto Lord. Kenpachi kept his eyes fixed on the condition of his old comrade and friend, and though he did not show it, he was worried for her. He asked Sun if he had any senzu beans left, and before Sun could answer, Yuruchi clamped a hand over his mouth, whispering that only 2 remained, and they could not be spent carelessly. Once Unohana was stable, she sat up on the ground taking stock of the situation. In the end, she decided she would not assist with Rukia's execution, but she would not help rescue her either, since she was far too drained from the fight and needed to recover at her division. Yachiru, help me get back to the 4th division, asked the captain, rising unsteadily to her feet. Sure thing, said the pink-haired girl, ready to leave, until Unohana had one last thing to say to Harem.